Okay, so picture this. You're at a weekend getaway with friends, enjoying ice skating, cozy fires, and good company. Sounds pretty idyllic, right?
It does.
But what if, in the middle of all the merriment, your deepest secrets were suddenly exposed?
Yeah.
Like in anonymous letters sent to everyone there, letters with scandalous accusations and graphic illustrations, and even doctored photographs.
Oh, wow. Well, this isn't just some hypothetical. This is the reality for a group of Prussian nobles back in the late 1800s.
Oh, wow.
This is the Kotze affair. It's a real-life scandal that rocked Prussian society, and it still fascinates people over a century later.
Wow. So we've got a bunch of sources here, right? Detailing everything, the players, the events, the mystery around who wrote those letters.
Mm.
And that's what we're diving deep into today. This salacious saga, unpacking its complexities and exploring what it tells us about power, reputation, and human nature.
I'm excited. What I find really interesting about this affair is how it started as this seemingly isolated incident with just a handful of people. But it ended up revealing so much about the anxieties and vulnerabilities and power dynamics of an entire society.
Yeah, I can see that. So let's set the stage. It's January 1891, and we have a group of 15 prominent figures
Mm.
from the highest levels of Prussian society, gathering at Grunwald Castle for a weekend of ice skating and festivity.
Right, and we're talking the elite of the elite here, right? Dukes, counts, high-ranking officials. Their lives were all intertwined through family ties, political alliances, shared secrets.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the center of this whole gathering was Princess Charlotte of Prussia, the Kaiser's sister, known for her love of gossip and, well, a bit of a mischievous streak. She was the hostess for this ill-fated party, which, according to multiple sources, descended into a scandalous affair, with both heterosexual and homosexual entanglements.
Oh, wow. It's important to consider the social context here, of course. I mean, this behavior might seem shocking to us today, but within the Prussian aristocracy at that time, these gatherings, while not exactly commonplace, they were certainly not unheard of.
Right, right. So everyone goes home from the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little worse for wear. Assuming their secrets stayed safe within those castle walls. But then the letters start arriving.
And these weren't just your typical gossip notes. They were vicious, explicit, and filled with shockingly accurate accusations about the events at Grunwald.
Yeah, we're not just talking written accusations. These letters also included pornographic illustrations and photos that had been doctored to include the heads of those involved. Can you imagine the shock and horror of receiving something like that in your mail? I
No!
can't either.
I mean, this wasn't just someone spreading rumors or causing general mischief. This was a calculated attack, a deliberate attempt to expose and humiliate. And the letters went on relentlessly for 4 years, over 400 sent in total.
Wow, that's a lot. So we know this wasn't some random act. This was a deliberate, well, almost an obsession. This person was obsessed with exposing these people. So before we get into the fallout, let's meet some of the key players here.
Right.
First up, we have Duke Ernst Gunther of Schleswig-Holstein, the Kaiser's brother-in-law, nicknamed the Rom for his, shall we say, enthusiastic approach to romantic pursuits.
I like that. So Duke Ernst Gunther, he was a man of considerable wealth and power. He was known for his scandalous behavior, with rumors swirling about his affairs. And there was even this incident, where he lost a prestigious military medal, shall we say, in compromising circumstances.
Oh, my. Then we have the Count and Countess von Hohenau, a couple known for their open marriage and numerous affairs. The Count was known for his same-sex relationships, while the Countess, nicknamed Lübke, had a string of lovers, including a man who would later become Reich Chancellor.
Wow. The letters were especially brutal towards the Countess. They used really crude and deeply personal language, which suggests there was a lot of animosity directed towards her specifically.
Yeah, it's clear that this letter writer had some strong feelings about her. And then there's Liebrecht von Kotze, the Kaiser's chamberlain. Now, a chamberlain wasn't just some glorified butler. He was a high-ranking official, right? Responsible for managing the Kaiser's household and acting as a trusted advisor.
Right.
So a very important role.
Absolutely. Kotze's position placed him at the very heart of the Prussian court, making him both a witness to and a potential target of all this drama.
Right. And unlike many of his peers, he wasn't born into nobility. He rose through the ranks due to his competence and the Kaiser's favor, which of course made him a target of envy and resentment, especially from rivals like Baron von Schrader, who was another chamberlain who attended the Grunwald party.
The fact that Kotze was a self-made man, an outsider who had earned his position through merit, that likely made the resentment even worse.
Yeah, I can see that. So we have our players, the setting, and the weapon of choice, these poison pen letters. But the scandal was just getting started. So let's move on to the aftermath of these letters and how they impacted everyone involved.
Okay. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Katze affair, where we left off with Prussian high society, reeling from those vicious anonymous letters. And remember, this wasn't just idle gossip. These letters contained graphic details, doctored images, the kind of thing that could really ruin lives back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wasn't just any group being targeted. This was happening within the Kaiser's inner circle. Those letters started hinting at the Kaiser's own supposed dalliances with Countess von Hohenau.
Oh, wow. So that's where things really escalated.
Exactly. Kaiser Wilhelm II. Well, he was a proud and powerful man. And even a suggestion of gossip about his personal life was completely unacceptable to him.
Yeah, you can't blame him for that.
I mean, it was a direct challenge to his authority.
Right. So how did he react? Did he order a full investigation to find the author?
He certainly tried to put a stop to it. Investigators were sent all over Berlin. They were even monitoring post boxes, trying to catch the sender in the act. But the letters were sent so cleverly, always from different locations. It made them nearly impossible to trace.
It sounds like this person really knew what they were doing.
They did.
But they couldn't keep it up forever, could they?
Well, someone had to slip up eventually, and someone did. In June of 1894, the police made a shocking arrest.
Oh.
Their suspect, Liberrecht von Katze, the Kaiser's own Chamberlain.
Wait. Katze? But he was one of the people being targeted by the letters. That doesn't make sense.
I know, right? It's counterintuitive on the surface. Why would someone who's being victimized be the one sending them?
It's a good question. So what was the evidence against him? Did they find him with a stack of letters and a pot of glue for those doctored photos?
Not quite. The evidence was actually quite flimsy. The main thing they had was a supposed match between ink blotter patterns from Katze's office and those on some of the letters.
Ink blotter patterns.
But it was hardly conclusive.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very convincing. And Katze was a favorite of the Kaiser. This wasn't just some random person they could easily throw away.
Exactly. Katze's arrest sent shockwaves through the court. Imagine the surprise of the prison officials when a royal carriage pulled up with their high-profile prisoner.
I can only imagine.
It was a huge scandal. The New York Times was even covering it, calling it the talk of Germany.
Wow, international news. So what happened next? Was Katze immediately put on trial?
Well, he was held in prison for months while they built their case. But here's where things take another interesting turn.
Okay.
Remember how those letters kept being sent, even while Katze was locked up?
Yeah, that's a pretty big problem for the prosecution, isn't it? Did anyone point this out?
Absolutely. Support for Katze actually started to grow as people realized he couldn't possibly be sending letters from prison. Even members of the Kaiser's cabinet started expressing doubts about his guilt.
It sounds like the investigation was falling apart. So did they bring in anyone else to look at the evidence?
They did. They brought in a handwriting expert to examine the letters. And their analysis suggested something even more surprising.
Oh.
The letters may have been written by a woman.
A woman? Now that changes things. Was there any indication of who this mystery woman might be?
Unfortunately, no. The true author of those letters was never definitively identified. That's part of what makes this whole story so fascinating.
I can see that. So Katze was innocent, but still stuck in prison. What happened next?
Well, eventually, the evidence of his innocence just became overwhelming. And there was growing pressure from people who believed in him. So Katze was exonerated and released from prison.
Wow.
But as you can imagine, he was furious.
Yeah, I'd be pretty upset too. His reputation was tarnished. He'd been unjustly imprisoned. It must have felt like his whole world had been turned upside down.
Exactly. And in that era, honor and reputation were everything. Katze felt he had no choice but to defend his name, even if it meant resorting to drastic measures.
So what did he do? Did he take legal action against those who had accused him?
He chose a different path. Remember Baron von Schrader, the rival chamberlain who supposedly supplied that ink blotter evidence?
Yeah, the one who seemed jealous of Katze's position and the favor he had with the Kaiser.
That's the one. Well, Katze challenged him to a duel.
A duel? Seriously? I thought those were illegal by that point.
Technically, yes. But dueling was still practiced, especially among the upper classes. It was a way to settle disputes of honor. And these weren't just some gentlemanly exchange of pistols at dawn. These were duels to the death,
Oh,
with multiple shots fired until one man was incapacitated.
that's intense. It's hard to believe that kind of violence was considered acceptable back then.
It really speaks to the culture of honor at that time. To be falsely accused was a grave offense, and Katze felt he had no other recourse but to defend his name this way.
So did he win the duel?
Well, he was actually wounded in that first duel, shot in the thigh. But he wasn't done yet. Even while recovering from his injury, he challenged another man he believed was involved in his downfall, Hofmarschall von Rieseck.
And who was this Hofmarschall? I'm not sure I remember his role.
Ah, right. A Hofmarschall was a high-ranking official in the royal household, responsible for things like court ceremonies and protocol. Think of him as a kind of master of ceremonies.
Okay, got it. So Kotze challenged him to a duel as well. That seems incredibly risky, considering he was still recovering.
It was, and this time, the duel ended in Rieseck's death.
Wow. So Kotze was a free man, but he had killed a man. What happened to him after that?
Well, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison for Rieseck's death. But here's another interesting twist. The Kaiser actually sent him a gift while he was recovering from his first duel wound.
A gift, really?
It seems to suggest some level of sympathy on the Kaiser's part, or maybe even guilt.
That's fascinating. It sounds like the Kaiser had some complicated feelings about the whole thing.
He did.
On the one hand, he had Kotze arrested based on flimsy evidence, but then he sent him a gift and ultimately pardoned him. What do you make of that?
I think it's a testament to the complexity of their relationship. The Kaiser clearly valued Kotze's abilities and loyalty, but he was also a man deeply concerned with his image and authority.
Right. It sounds like everyone involved was caught in a web of their own making, driven by pride, jealousy, and a desperate need to protect their social standing.
Exactly. The Kotze affair wasn't just about salacious gossip. It was a microcosm of the tensions and anxieties within the Prussian elite, a world where power and reputation were everything. And even the slightest transgression could have devastating consequences.
And at the center of it all is this lingering mystery, the author of the letters. We've explored a few of the main suspects, but without more concrete evidence, their identity remains a mystery.
It does, and that's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the various theories about the letter writer and what this scandal can teach us about gossip and anonymity.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been unraveling all the twists and turns of the Kotze affair, this scandal that rocked the Prussian elite back in the late 1800s. We've met the key players, seen the fallout, and now we're left with the biggest question of all. Who was the mastermind behind those poison pen letters?
It's a question that has stumped historians for over a century. And the fact that there's no definitive answer, well, it just adds to the intrigue of this whole case. It's fueled so much speculation and debate. So let's dive into some of the most compelling theories. And we'll start with the individual that many consider to be the prime suspect, Duke Ernst Gunther, the Kaiser's notorious brother-in-law.
Right, the Ram himself.
Yeah.
Given his reputation as a troublemaker and his eventual falling out with the Kaiser, he certainly had the motive.
He did. Duke Ernst Gunther was known for pushing boundaries, and he seemed to relish in flouting social norms. He wasn't afraid of scandal, and some believe he might have orchestrated the whole thing as a way to disrupt the court and discredit his rivals.
That's like something straight out of a Shakespearean play. A disgruntled duke using anonymous letters to take down his enemies.
But is there any real evidence linking him to the letters?
Well, unfortunately, no. There's no smoking gun, no confession, no eyewitness account, placing him at the scene of the crime, so to speak.
Right.
The evidence is mostly circumstantial. It's his personality, his strained relationship with the Kaiser, and the fact that the scandal shifted attention away from his own transgressions.
So it's possible, but far from proven. Are there any other suspects in this royal whodunit? There's another theory. Though it's considered less likely, it points the finger at someone much closer to home. Princess Charlotte, the Kaiser's sister, and, if you recall, the hostess of that fateful ice skating party.
Wait a minute, the princess. But she was a target of those letters too. Why would she write them?
That's exactly why it seems so improbable at first. But some historians argue that it could have been a calculated, albeit twisted, plan. Remember, Charlotte was known for her love of gossip and that mischievous streak. Perhaps she orchestrated the scandal to manipulate those around her and gain a sense of control in a world where she often felt powerless.
That's a bold theory. Is there anything to actually support that, or is it just pure speculation?
Again, the evidence is primarily circumstantial. There's nothing directly linking Charlotte to the letters. But her personality and her position within the court, well, they make her a fascinating, if unlikely, suspect.
It's worth noting that one of our sources is a letter written by Charlotte expressing sympathy for Kotze's wife. Could that be interpreted as a sign of guilt? Maybe regret for the chaos she might have unleashed?
It's certainly possible it could be a sign of genuine remorse, or maybe she simply felt bad for Kotze and his family. even if she played a role in their misfortune. Without more evidence, it's tough to say for sure.
So we have two main suspects, the rebellious duke and the mischievous princess.
Huh?
But what if the culprit was someone completely different? Someone outside this whole inner circle of nobles?
That's always a possibility. Some historians believe the letter writer could have been a disgruntled servant, someone with inside knowledge of the court, and a desire for revenge against their employers.
Or maybe a jealous lover, scorned by one of the nobles, seeking to expose their hypocrisy and infidelity.
Exactly. The possibilities are truly endless, and without more concrete evidence. Well, the true identity of the author may forever remain a mystery.
So after all this, what can we take away from this Prussian scandal? Why should we even care about dukes and princesses behaving badly over a century ago?
The Kotz affair might seem like a relic of the past, but it speaks to something much deeper, something that transcends time and social class. It highlights those universal human impulses, the desire for power, the allure of secrets, the devastating impact of gossip and reputation damage. Whether it's whispers in a palace corridor or viral posts on social media today, the methods might change, but the underlying motivations remain the same.
It's a powerful reminder that even the most powerful and privileged are still vulnerable to scandal, and that anonymity can be a weapon
Yeah.
used for both good and evil.
Imagine if something like the Kathis affair happened today. How would social media amplify the scandal? And how would it impact the lives of those involved? It's a chilling thought.
The Kotz affair is definitely a cautionary tale. It reminds us of the fragility of reputation and the enduring power of secrets. It's a story that continues to fascinate and provoke, prompting us to examine those darker aspects of human nature and the complex dynamics of power and social status.
It's a story that reminds us that history isn't just about dates and names. It's a tapestry woven with human drama, intrigue, and lessons that still resonate today.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Kotze affair. We hope you found it as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did. And if you enjoyed this journey into history's mysteries, be sure to subscribe for more captivating deep dives.